What did these freedom advocates do? They implemented lockdowns and closed down small shops and small businesses and bankrupted millions of people.
Sure. Are you surprised by, silver's now down at $18 an ounce, and gold is is in the $1,700 range now. Are you surprised gold and silver are so low with all the crises in the world?
The philosophical question is, can anything still surprise you? Because we have democracies. And when I went to school, I was told, well, we produce good people because in a democracy, you vote for the best people and they get to the top and so forth, and they run the business according to essentially democratic principles. But we have the worst governments, the most incompetent people at the top and so forth. Right. So suddenly I'm no longer surprised about anything. And then I was told, whenever I went to school or university or later on in my life, oh, in democracies, we have freedom. What did these freedom advocates do? They implemented lockdowns and closed down small shops and small businesses and bankrupted millions of people. You understand, this is not a democratic measure. No royalty has ever done that to its citizens in a kingdom. No feudal has ever done that. But this democracy did, as socialism did, by the way, through expropriations. But the question is also, what will the government do next? You know, they suddenly came out and said, everybody needs to have a vaccine. And if you don't have a vaccine, you cannot work in the police or in airlines and this and that and so on. So that created labor shortages. So I'm used to extremely bad decisions, and I'm prepared to accept that the government will continue to implement horrific economic policies, horrific. They also didn't acknowledge inflation until just recently. The whole of last year, they said, oh, there's no inflation, it's transitory and so forth. There's a blip up and down and so forth, and so on. And then when you ask me, well, are you surprised of these setbacks in gold, silver, platinum, and by the way, industrial commodities this year, most of them are down 20%, not oil, but the metals. And to this I respond, well, we have tightening liquidity. This we have to see. Is not obvious to everyone, but basically asset markets have been weak this year. And I never seen, I mean, I started to work in 1970, so I've had some experience, and I don't want to overplay the experience I had, because sometimes you forget things and so on. But I never seen that stocks and bonds would go down at about the same rate equally. Normally, when you have a stock market decline of 20%, as we had recently, it would signal a recession. Okay, I think we are in a recession, but it's the public doesn't see it that way because it's hidden by inflation. But we are in a recession, and at the same time, bonds went down. Normally, in recessions, the bond market rallies. In other words, interest rates come down. But this time around, as the economy weakened, interest rates went up. And when the inflection point will come, I don't know. But in this situation, first of all, it's quite obvious I'm sort of I wouldn't call a gold bug and silver bug, but under normal conditions, I believe that gold and silver is an attractive investment at the present time. I say under normal condition, because when I look at these government officials, what they've done, they may one day say, well, the gold that you have is not yours anymore.
Right.
It's maybe more difficult to do nowadays than it used to be, because there's a whole industry around the ETFs and so forth. And to go to CalPERS and, you know, to the pension funds, this is now no yours. Maybe a little bit touchy, but it can be done. They've done it already.
Yeah, we have that, you know, here in the United States, 30-year, the mortgage rates, 30-year interest rates have yesterday got above 6%. So, and you can already see it in our numbers, the housing market, the housing starts have all slowed down. The banks are laying off mortgage brokers. You can really sort of see that happening in the housing market, that's coming to a halt, which, and you can, we're all sorts of notices of layoffs are starting. I wouldn't be surprised if the unemployment rate starts going a little bit higher. And those types of numbers, that's when the Fed really starts feeling the pressure, right? To that they can't continue with the current tightening path when more and more people are unemployed, and that might be the trigger, you think, before they have to change policy?
Well, we don't know. The policy change could also come because of a financial institution that fails or something like that, or massive fraud, or a horrible earnings disappointment in a stock that is important, and the stock collapses. There are lots of reasons. They will find an excuse to ease. If they really can't find anything, they'll say, well, it's because of Putin we have to ease. And if Putin has already died, then they'll find Xi Jinping in China or somebody. You can be sure.
Yeah, they always have to have an enemy. They have to, if they don't have an enemy, they'll create an enemy for us.
Right.
Yes. Trump.
What do you think of Vladimir Putin? Do you think he's a rational actor? Do you think he's got a plan here, or is he just a madman on the loose out there, and he's just what's your gut instinct on what it will take for Russia to start normalizing and getting the energy flow? I mean, obviously the world needs the energy and the commodities from Russia. I mean, there's not enough natural gas and oil to just completely ignore Russia. I think that's sort of foolish of the Europeans and the Americans to believe that we can do without Russian energy. So what does it take to get back to normal? Is there any solution, or they're just going to keep hurting us by keeping this going long term?
Well, you asked actually 2 or 3 different questions in one sentence. First of all, he is rational, and he clearly outlined his view. He said, we don't want NATO in Ukraine. It's very clear condition. The Western world, the US, has no strategic advantage to have NATO in Ukraine whatsoever. Zero. For what?
Yeah.
But no, they wanted to go and test him and annoy him. Also, they kept on building up the army in Ukraine. This is not an effort for the last 6 months. They've been doing this for 5 years, sending weapons and military personnel that trained the Ukraine army. The war has probably kind of, in terms of difficulty, exceeded his expectations. Also, he has overestimated the strength of the Russian military. He must have realized our military is hopeless in kind of day-to-day battle. That may be correct, because when Hitler invaded Russia, the Russian army was not at all prepared for the aggression.
Right.
It's only over time that they were able to respond. But when they responded, they responded with incredible firepower, incredible.
Yeah.
And that already happened 200 years ago when Napoleon invaded Russia. The Russian army retreated. And the last big battle was at Borodino in 1812. And the Russian army, officially, the French won. But it was a victory which was extremely costly, extremely costly. The Russian army retreated wisely. They just retreated and didn't want to fight anymore because the casualties were so high. So they thought, what for? We let them move further into Russia. And then the winter came, and that was then the end of the invasion, essentially, because
Wow.
the Russian had burned part of Moscow. So the French had to retreat. That's when the Russians and the Cossacks and everybody went after the French, when they started to retreat. That's when they beat them, really, not in the aggression. So we have to be very careful. And in my view, the neocons, there are some people that want war. Recently, an article appeared, and these are news that have been verified. They're not fake news. Apparently, the Russians and the Ukraine were negotiating. In came the poodle of the US, Mr. Boris Johnson, and said, no, 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 we don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted war. They want the conflict to continue. I suppose that there's a lot of money to be made in Ukraine.
Yeah.
You understand?
Right.
You give $13 billion or $20 billion or $1 billion to Ukraine, and someone gets some money back big time.